Welcome to Lifemap with Dr. Matt Jensen, a podcast dedicated to empowering teens and young adults. Join us on a journey of self-discovery as we tackle overcoming obstacles and challenges while igniting your true potential and rising to the best version of yourself. Here's your host, Dr. Matt Jensen.
Hello and welcome back to Lifemap, the podcast where we tackle everything about your life journey as a teen or a young adult. I'm excited and thrilled that you joined us again, and I'm particularly excited today about the topic that we're going to discuss. And the reason being is that if you've now by chance picked up my book, Lifemap for Teens, you'll know that this podcast is based on the principles in that book as we continue to talk about and tackle this interesting period of time in your life as a teen or a young adult, even if you've just started college. And of course, we welcome parents and families and anybody else who wants to hear and discuss and listen to the thoughts that have to go with the interesting time and challenging times that teenagers have. And so as we tackle these different topics, there's an underlying theme that is so important. Especially it's important in what I call Travel Tip 1 in my book about learning to discover who you really are. And so it's my hope that as you listen to this episode today, that it will set the stage for ongoing episodes as we seek to help and empower each of you to make the right decisions, to give you the aid and the help that you need on your journey to attain the highest levels of success and happiness as you migrate those difficult teenage years, you begin work, you begin college, whatever it is. We hope that these episodes and these topics are going to go a long way to helping you be prepared and to tackle the times, challenges, and decisions that come. And so back to the topic we're going to talk about today, but I'm going to open the topic with a story. First of all, now you may have heard this story. It was on the news, it was on social media, it was all over a few years ago. It was about a high school football captain, the quarterback, the guy who seemed to have it all, was well liked by his peers, his teachers, came from a great family, and it was time for him during his senior year to choose a prom date. Now, as we break down that interesting social dynamic of being a popular guy in high school, the football captain, you can imagine that he had his choice of just about anybody to go to prom with. And who he chose was a little bit surprising, but if you read the story, it touched your heart, just like it touched ours as well. Ben Moser was friends with Mary Lapkowitz, I hope I said that right, since they were little kids. Later on, they had separated, they moved or gone to different schools. I can't remember that part of the story, but look it up. But when it came time to choose a date, Ben remembered his friendship with Mary. And when it was time to choose a date, he remembered that he told Mary that when they were older, they were going to go to prom together. Now, here's the interesting thing. Mary has Down syndrome. She has special needs. And when you are in high school and it's time to choose your prom date and you're the captain of the football team, there's probably quite the social expectation. More than that, there is images and peer pressure of probably trying to look the part as well. But Ben remembered his promise to his young friend Mary, and he found a way to reconnect with her, and he took Mary to his senior prom. It was a wonderful night. He had a great time, and she had a wonderful time. Ben's parents were so thankful and so touched by his decision to make good on his childhood promise to his friend Mary. Mary was excited to reconnect with her friend Ben, and they had a great time. And you can imagine the feeling of Mary's parents as Ben, this fine young man, a great student in high school, made good on his word to take their sweet daughter to prom. So the topic I'm going to talk about today on this podcast is the principles of self-perception and self-image, and how they create the foundation of understanding who you are and empowering yourself with making good decisions. So I'm going to define each of these as we go forward and talk a little bit more about these principles and how crucial they are during the teenage and early adulthood years. We're going to talk today about self perception and self esteem. Now, these are two topics that go hand in hand, but they truly do mean different things. So, let me kind of define them really quick for each of you that are listening. So, first of all, when I talk about self perception, I'm talking about the way we see ourselves or how we see ourselves. It's a little bit more objective and less emotional. Whereas self esteem is how we feel about ourselves, right? It can be happy, it can be sad, but self perception is more of an objective, unbiased, if we can be unbiased with ourselves. And self esteem is truly about all the emotions and how that plays out. So, for example, let me give you a couple different ways to describe this. So, with self perception, I may be able to say, I am a married father of four. I like to golf. I own a home. I'm a dentist. I've been a business owner. My patients like me. When you have a self perception, they can be good things or they can be bad things. For example, I'm terrible at doing the dishes. I'm not good I'm not good at listening a lot of the time. And so those can be things that I observe about myself, which are my self perception. Now, hopefully, with our self perception, when we talk about things that we maybe don't like about ourselves or need to be improved, we do it in a productive way. In other words, we're not trying to bring ourselves down. We're not trying to just be negative, but we're looking at things that maybe we don't like that we want to improve, right? Or with positive things with our self perception, when we say, I was a successful business owner, I was a good boss. For you that are in high school, you may say, I'm good at math class, I'm good at gymnastics, I'm a starter on the football team, I'm a good friend, I'm a good listener. These are things that we observe about ourselves, how we see ourselves. Now, self esteem is tightly related to our self perception, but it's all about the emotions. So, for example, when we understand what our self perception is, do we have a negative feeling about ourselves? Does it bring us down? Does it make us sad? Does it make us lonely? Those are examples of a low self esteem. A positive self esteem doesn't necessarily mean that everything's perfect and we're happy all the time, but that we're motivated enough to like what we're doing and to keep going. We like the friends that we surround ourselves with. We have a good relationship with our parents. We're generally happy outside of the day to day frustrations and problems and sadness that we all have from time to time. But overall, we're a happy person with a good attitude and a good outlook on life. That's a positive self esteem. Now, let's ask an even more important question like, what are the effects of a positive self perception and a positive self esteem? And why should it matter? Well, let's go back to the story I told at the beginning of the episode. This young man who took this Down syndrome girl to the prom. Now, what does that have to do with self esteem? Well, when somebody has a positive self esteem and a positive self perception, they aren't focused on what other people think. They're focused on what brings themselves happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction. People with positive self esteems are much more likely to look at the needs of others. And you all know when we focus on the needs of others, we all know that that can bring a greater sense of happiness, a greater sense of peace and fulfillment in ourselves. So, one marker that we have a positive self esteem is, are we focused on the needs of others? Now, I'm going to come back to that because we're really going to break this down. And I think you're going to find this really interesting. In fact, I want to even pull in some just really amazing quotes from people that you know. In fact, the first one comes from a singer that we all know. And she said, your self worth is determined by you. You don't have to depend on someone telling you who you are. Who said that? None other than Beyonce, right? One of the greatest singers, songwriters, and producers of all time. For somebody who's in the public spotlight all the time, who you would think is worried about what other people think of her, has begun to realize, or maybe realized all along, that true happiness and joy comes from being happy and loving ourselves for who we are. In other words, having a positive self esteem, right? So, what are some of the things that affect our self esteem? Maybe you're somebody who says, "Man, I'm not happy with myself. I'm not happy. I'm always comparing myself, or I want to be better than this, or I want to be like someone." Well, let's talk about each of these, because while you may have a negative or a bad self esteem, some of you may have a positive self esteem, but there's different reasons for it. And maybe one of these things that we're going to talk about might hit home to you. But I want to just say something before I go on with this. If you suffer from a bad self esteem, now, this is different than suffering from clinical situations like depression and anxiety. Now, those things are affected by our self esteem and they play on each other. But I just want you to understand something, that there is a way forward for you to be able to be happy with yourself. There is a way to love yourself for who you are and not for who you want to become. And so bear with me and let's go through these things. I want you to identify in your own lives, in your own sphere of existences, if any of these seems to ring true. First of all, let's talk about what negative influences, or how negative influences can affect our behavior. So, or vice versa, we want to talk about things that can negatively affect our self esteem. So, the first and foremost is bad role models, right? Do we look up to people that are doing bad things? Why? Why is that? If we look up to people that are doing bad things, we might be more likely to do bad things, negative things. And we've all been told over and over again that doing high risk behaviors, being involved in unproductive, mean, cruel behaviors does not do anything to strengthen our self esteem. But instead, when we have positive role models, so think about what music you listen to, not necessarily the music itself, we'll get to that later, but the people that you follow on social media, the music that you listen to, the people that you want to be like, the people that you're trying to imitate, the people that you act like. Are they positive role models in society? Are they looked up to? Are they involved in good works? If not, we could slowly be starting to do what we call modeling after bad role models. And that leads us to the next one. The next thing that can affect our self esteem and bring ourselves down negatively is comparing ourselves to others. Now, it's so important that we understand, and it's a difficult thing to do, but if we constantly look at what others are accomplishing and we grow envious of them, we will never be happy with ourselves. In fact, one of the singers that I love the messages of so many of her songs, many of you know Sia, S-I-A, the singer. She says, "I don't read reviews or interviews or anything because I'm afraid. If I believed the good, then I might believe the bad, and there will be bad." And so, are we comparing ourselves to others, or do we tend to listen to the words of others? And more importantly, are we basing our own self worth, our own self esteem on what others say about us or to us? There is such power in letting go of what others are and wanting to become like them. When you focus on yourself and your strengths, that is where you begin to find what I referred to over and over again is your superpower. So we're going to take a pause for a minute, because what I want you to do is write down, even if you have to pause this episode, or remember if you're listening in the car to do it when you get home. I want you to write down 5 things that you like about yourself. And then I want you to do the same thing, asking somebody else to do it. I want you to ask somebody that you love and somebody that you trust to write down 5 things that they like about you or that you're good at. And when you focus on the list that you created, the things that you like about yourself, the things that somebody that you know and trust loves about yourself, that gives you a core start to why you should admire yourself, not in a vain way, but why you should start with enjoying and believing in who you are and the great things that you can accomplish rather than basing them on somebody else. Do that exercise and come back to that list over and over again. But let's continue on. What about the content that we surround ourselves with or that we infuse into our lives? Music, social media, movies. Are we focused on negative content or positive content? Negative content, negative lyrics, violence, these kinds of things have shown to have a negative influence on our self-esteem. So let's reevaluate what we're listening to. Here's some other things that are a little bit more difficult to talk about. What is our home life like? Are we in abusive relationships? Are we around addiction? Both of which you don't have to be a genius to know is going to lead to negative self-esteem. What can you do about it? What if you're a junior in high school and you have negative family relationships, abusive family relationships? Well, first of all, I want you to understand, if you are being abused, I don't care if it's physical, socially, emotionally, sexually abused. If you find yourself in an abusive situation, the first thing to recognize that it is not your fault. You are not the cause of receiving abuse like that. And I tell you, my friends, first of all, that my heart is with you if you find yourself in one of those situations. And my wish for you is that you can draw upon our podcast and other familiar sources of positive content to help draw you out and away. Some of you might have to wait time before you can safely get away from those situations, but we are going to post within the notes of this podcast helplines and hotlines and resources that can help you get out of abusive situations and abusive relationships. Not only is it crucial for your safety and well-being, but the longer you allow yourself to be a victim of these abusive situations, the more damage it will do to your self-esteem. And the purpose of this podcast is to empower you. You can choose to overcome this type of situation, but as punishing and difficult as it is, you've got to take that first step. And the first step is believing that you have a choice. And that may take some time. And when you believe that you have a choice, then you can begin to take steps to reach out. If you have a phone, if you have a computer, or in the notes of our podcast, contact one of the resources that you can begin to get help and be relieved of the punishing and of the debilitating effects of abuse. And when you are able to overcome abusive relationships and get out of those situations, you will begin to see the sunlight dawn of a new day and your opportunity begin to blossom in that new sunlight. But it's imperative that you take those first steps. Let's keep moving on. We're going to do many more episodes on abuse and on situations like overcoming some of the most debilitating situations, obstacles, and challenges in life. But let's move on. Selfishness. When we are solely focused on ourselves and what we want, we're never going to be 100% satisfied. We're never going to have enough things. We're never going to have the next and the best of everything. So when we let go of selfishness, when we let go of wanting to have the most or the best, we begin to unlock the noose of negative self-perception and self-esteem. And the final thing is, and this might be a little bit shocking to you, but when we continually place ourselves in isolation, how many of you, right after school, go upstairs, put yourself in the room, close the door, put your headphones on, and begin scrolling or watching or playing games? That is isolation. You're in a room, not surrounded by others. You've got your headphones on so you can't hear what's going on around you, and your eyes are glued to your screen. In other words, most of your senses are turned inward into a small space. When we experience isolation, when we experience turning ourselves off from those around us, we're more likely to find less and less happiness and less drive to be a part of and do things that really matter. So I want you to think about that list. I want you to think of those things that have negative impacts on our self-esteem, on our self-perception, because what really we need to talk about is then how those negative influences affect us. What is the result of letting those negative influences into our life? There's so many of them. I'm going to go through a quick list and ask yourself, yep, that rings a bell, or no, that doesn't ring a bell. But ask yourself, because so many bad results come from it. The negative influences affect our behavior. They can increase our anxiety and depression. If we already struggle with it, it's already hard enough to overcome it. But if we're allowing bad influences that negatively affect our self-esteem, our anxiety is going to grow. And the good news, we're going to end with the good news with this podcast, is the opposite, how we can decrease anxiety and depression. But did you know that negative self-esteem can lead to more anger, aggression, more negative behaviors? They can. We tend to socially withdraw from family and friends, the very sources that can lead us to happiness and peace. It can also tend to turn us to addictive behaviors. You know what the newest addiction is, right? The newest addiction is technology, screen time, video games, social media, even movies, texting, whatever it is, going to our screens for our source of happiness, our source of information. Now, that's not to say that our screens and our devices can't be the sources of amazing things in our lives, can't be the sources of happiness and inspiration. They can, and I'll show you how they will. But they can turn us to addictive behaviors. Like I said, technology is one addiction. Another addiction is, of course, ones that we hear about in school all the time: drug abuse, alcohol use. What other addictions are there? There could be sexual addictions, pornography. There could be so many addictions that are debilitating. And I, again, want to take just a time out and talk about addictions for a minute. If you find yourself in the throes of addiction, I want you to know that there is a way out. I myself have been the victim of different types of addictions in my life. And the unbelievable, inspiring, and empowering feeling that comes from being able to slowly disengage from the addiction and find a road to recovery, find the road to freedom, can be one of the most powering and influential moments in your life. Again, we're going to put resources in the notes of this episode to help you know great places and resources that you can take advantage of to help you overcome any source of addiction. Addictions can also be always wanting the praise of negative influences in the form of bad friends, bad relationships. That itself can be addicting. We're going to give you some resources with how you can overcome addictions. And I want you to know we're going to have episodes on addiction. And I want you to know that, again, my heart is with you. And if you find yourself in the throes of addictions, hold on. There is a way out. And if you want to take the first step to overcoming, there are solutions. But addictions can be fed when we infuse ourselves with the negative influences that bring down our self-esteem. All of these things that I've just mentioned, all of them can bring about a lower self-esteem. You'll find yourself not liking yourself, and in some devastating cases, hating yourself, which leads to things I don't like to talk about, but further abuse, suicide. And I don't think anybody watching or listening to this episode ever has that as a goal in life. But further things that can happen, we can act out. Again, I said aggressive behaviors. We can be less driven. We'll be careless the more that we let these negative influences decrease our self-esteem. Also, we don't do well in school. Our relationships suffer. We don't have healthy relationships. We don't do well in school because we don't care. These are all effects of negative self esteem that can occur when we let negative influences in our lives. Now, before we turn to the brighter half of this podcast, which by the way, I think it's going to be less than half because I want to end on a great note. But in my book, Life Map, as we talk about life being a journey and us being able to choose our destination, making the choice to have a positive, happy journey through life, travel tip one in the book is all about discovering who you are. So that when you decide what your destination is, it's done in tune with knowing who you are, what your capabilities are, what your abilities are. And so that you can drive yourself to becoming the best version of yourself and reaching the highest levels of potential. So when we choose to bring in to our lives the influences that will increase our self esteem, increase our self confidence, and we learn how to love ourselves and accept ourselves, we have taken the first step toward that travel tip of understanding who we are so that we can move forward to the direction of our choosing, of our destiny on our road trip in life. So let's talk about it. First of all, I want you to understand why it's important to have a positive self esteem and what kind of influences will increase our self esteem. Just as we said, bad role models, do we have positive role models? Do the singers that we listen to, the music that we listen to, the people that we hang around, the people that we take advice from, are they successful in life? Do they have a positive aura, a positive countenance about them that you want to be around? When you surround yourself with positive role models, you'll begin to draw from their power. You'll begin to draw from their influence, and that will influence you to start making positive choices in your life. So, who are you surrounding yourself? You won't be so worried about comparing yourself to others. And when you don't worry about comparing yourself to others, your self esteem goes up. Going back to that story that I opened with about the young man that took the girl, the Down syndrome girl, to the prom, he evidently had a positive self esteem because surely there were some in the crowd that thought that he was nuts or he was crazy to take a girl with special needs when he could have taken the most beautiful, attractive young lady in his school. But he didn't care. He didn't compare himself to others. He didn't care about what other people thought. All he knew was he was dialed into the things that make him happy, the things that make him feel peace. And he wanted to do something great. I admire this young man and the choice that he made. But when we choose to be happy with who we are and we're not comparing ourselves to others, we're only working on improving ourselves, it will lead to a positive self esteem. Let's talk about content for a minute. Again, I'm going to do all kinds of episodes on how to choose good, positive content through social media, your music. Even video games can have a lot of positive effects when we use them right and we play them with the right people. But when we choose to have positive content, that positive content speaks not only to our ears and to our eyes, it speaks to our hearts, and we begin to internalize the messaging that we're getting. So, for example, when you have an app on your iPhone that brings up a positive, self improving thought every day, that's great content. Something simple like don't forget to smile to at least 5 people every day. When you have a reminder like that from an app on your phone, that's constantly, even if you fail to give a smile to 5 people every day. But the goal is that you're starting your day or at some point in your day, you're getting positive vibes from the content that you're given. So, what about the music? Is the music inspiring? It doesn't mean that you can't listen to the kind of music you like. It's important to listen to the music that has great messages. I'm constantly finding great music with lyrics that inspire and uplift and have a great message. And so you can have the kind of beat, you can have the kind of feel to your music, but are you ready to let go of the music that brings down, that criticizes, that talks about smut, that talks about sleaze, that has nothing to do with improving who you are or your place in life? When we have productive and positive relationships in our lives, when we allow people with positivity into our life, it's going to have a positive effect on our self-esteem. For example, do you spend time with that grandparent that lives down the road? They don't live down the road. Do you FaceTime that grandparent or call them on the phone? Do you have friends that are constantly criticizing others? How does that make you feel inside? Now, does it mean you need to kick to the curb all the friends that you have, even the negative ones? No, it means that you need to do a better job of being a positive influence than they are of being a negative influence. But when you make positive relationships and you surround yourself with positive people, as I said earlier, your self-esteem is going to grow. Another thing, when you spend time with family and friends. Now, I know exactly in the teenage years how important it is to spend time with your friends. You're in an exciting period of time in your life, and you love to be with people that are thinking and considering and excited by and interested in the same things that you are. But as you spend quality time with family, with your parents, play a video game with your younger brother or sister. Play a board game with your younger brother or sister. Make time for those that love you the most. When you do that, you become more self-confident in yourself and your self-esteem rises. And when we allow all these positive influences into our lives, the results are astounding. There's studies that show when we bring positive relationships into our life, when we bring positive content in our lives, things that increase our self-esteem, positive self-esteems are associated with greater levels of happiness and hope. When I say the word hope, think about the talk we just had on addiction, on abuse. I think we could all use more happiness and hope in our lives. We become more productive. We become more able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. We're able to overcome our challenges easier. We become more motivated. We do better in school. We enjoy human, real relationships more often. And what I like to say is we become a lifter. When you cross the threshold to becoming a lifter, when you become the source of good for somebody else that has a low self-esteem, you've hit in life what we call a home run. You have just stepped into the car, you've closed the door, and you've driven the first mile onto your road to success. My friends, I can't underemphasize the importance of understanding what influences your self-perception and your self-esteem. It's my hope that you will choose to surround yourself with positive influences, that you'll listen to music that will build you up, that you'll participate in content on social media, on TikTok, that brings positive vibes and not negative vibes, that it brings thoughts of improving yourself rather than feelings of laughing or making fun of others. When you discover this important, what I call this seam of happiness and satisfaction, and you begin to realize the long-term effects it has on your psyche, on your self-esteem, the feelings of being able to do anything and accomplish anything will soar inside of you. It's my hope that during these podcast episodes, as we reveal these things to you, to teens, to young adults, I hope you'll listen to me in your car. I hope you'll watch the YouTube videos. I hope you'll find a way to be a part of this journey that I'm going to take as we reveal the principles and truths that are contained in the book, Lifemap for Teens, which I should say, and young adults and parents. You'll be able to unlock and ignite a fire within yourselves that will roar and bring you to levels of happiness and success that you may have not experienced before. There's still a lot to unpack. We're going to talk in many episodes about how to overcome certain challenges and certain obstacles. We're going to talk about how to bring in good content. But today was a big step about discovering how you can truly embrace who you are and what you can become. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you'll hit me up on social media. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is. And I promise I will do my best to respond to every question. In fact, we're going to do something really cool beginning with this episode. We may have even started it last episode, but I'm going to reward one person, one individual that sends me a thought-provoking question, a thought-provoking thought. That's a little redundant, but to give me a thought, a quote, or something that has to do with this episode today, give me your address. I'm going to send you gear. I'm going to send you a hat, a t-shirt, something with one of my positive vibes that I like to wear on my gear. I'm going to send that to you. So what have you got to lose? Send me your thoughts. I'm even going to bring up some of the questions on air. I'm going to even bring up some of the things that you ask about. But more importantly, I'm going to be there for you. I will respond. If you need help, I want to be your partner to help you get the help that you need. So help me out. Help me out. Help me to help you. Hit me up on social media. Ask my questions. Go to my website, drmattjensen.com, drmattjensen.com. Check out all the resources that we have. I'm also available to speak at organizations, to youth groups, and I have a media-infused presentation that you don't want to miss. Thanks again, friends. Hope to hear from you, and we'll see you next time on Life Map with Dr. Jensen.